Recording in 3, 2, and 1.
So the problem with Dungeons and Dragons is you see a lot of dungeons, but not a lot of dragons. Matter of fact, if you see a dragon, you're usually in trouble. This particular module fixes that.
Awesome. Welcome to episode 170 of Nerdery and Murdery.
Big 170. I'm Zig with your nerdery.
And I'm Jeffrey with your Murdery. Welcome to another week of the highs and lows and the ups and downs, the good and the bad. I have a new show on A&E I'm watching.
What's that?
It's called Escaping Evil. Of course, it falls into my wheelhouse. It's a new series on series on A&E, which covers cults and specifically around people who escaped the cult.
Escaping Evil, My Life in a Cult.
Yes. The very first episode, the first half of it is from a young woman who escaped Jim Jones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty wild. I'm digging it. I'm really digging it. Like I said, fits right in my wheelhouse.
Yes, sir.
It just appeared, so I've started watching that. Um, also saw Deadpool and Wolverine.
I haven't seen it yet.
Loved it. Loved every second of it. And there are so many Easter eggs.
Oh, yeah.
I'll give
I
this
heard you're
one.
gonna have to watch it like 2 or 3 times just to catch them all.
Yeah, you do. You do. I'll give one because you see it in the trailer, and I laughed my ass off. I had to explain it to Chelsea because she didn't understand. But it's a store in the background that's called Just Feet. And then when you see the whole sign, it's Rob Liefeld's Just Feet. Which, for those of you that don't know, Rob Liefeld is
Can't draw
the
feet.
creator of Deadpool, and he can't draw feet. That's been well known in the comic world for years. He can't draw feet. So there is a shop in the background that says Rob Liefeld's
Liefield's Just Feet.
Yes. So great. So many cameos. So many cameos. And it's violent, it's bloody. That's what Chelsea didn't really like it because of that, because she thought it was just ultra violence, which it is.
Yeah,
It
it's
is
supposed to
ultra
be.
violence and it's violent. Yeah,
Deadpool is
he's a violent character.
yeah.
Um,
That's his shtick.
yes, and it is extremely violent and extremely bloody, but it's so funny and so good. The one negative I would say on it, and I've actually seen some people comment it in on the web. I thought maybe it was just the theater I was in, but no, this is apparently how it is. The movie is loud. It's
Okay.
very loud. So be prepared for that. It's not just the movie theater you're in that's cranked it up to 11. It is a loud movie.
Well, like the episode 2 Star Wars was exceedingly loud. It was louder than the first one and the one that followed it. And I think it was
This is worse.
oh wow.
Yeah, you'll see when you see it, but definitely go to the theaters and see it. It is by and far my favorite Deadpool movie.
Nice.
It was so much fun. So much fun. I can't say enough about it, and I'm not going to spoil anything for you because you need to see it, but definitely see it in the movie theaters. This is one I will be able to watch again and again and again and just enjoy
Nice.
it every single time.
Rob Liefeld's Just Feet.
Yes.
It's killing me.
Cracked me up.
Oh my god.
That cracked me up. I just couldn't get over that one.
Oh my god, I bet he's pissed off.
Oh, I doubt it. I mean,
I know.
he's
Liefeld's kind
seen.
of a volatile
Is he?
individual.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
he's kind of a volatile.
people have commented for years how he can't draw feet. Surely he's just accepted it by now.
Yeah.
Or go and get somebody to teach you how to draw feet for fuck's
Feet.
sake. You know.
Well, I can't say this. He always drew really great boots.
Yeah. Yeah. Rob Liefeld was known for not being able to draw feet and draw women with these little teeny tiny waists and huge boobs.
Yeah.
That's just him. But man, go see it. Go see
Why
it.
not?
Have a blast with it. It's already made a mint. It's made I believe it's made 1 billion already.
Oh wow, cool.
Um,
So more Deadpool movies. Nice.
maybe maybe who knows?
Or at
Um,
least something from this creative team.
yeah.
That's nice.
I mean, it's considered successful because it could cost like 400 million to make.
Mm-hmm.
And has made over 1 billion. Last I saw, it's probably well
Okay.
past that by now.
3 times the amount. Nice.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
considered successful for sure. For sure.
Nice.
Marvel Jesus may have saved Marvel. He calls himself Marvel Jesus.
He calls himself Marvel Jesus. Yeah. Yeah,
Yes.
I need to see this. I heard there's a whole conversation about, yeah, we can't have the cocaine. But 5G told me no
Oh my
cocaine
God, that's so
jokes.
funny. Yes, him and Blind Al. Oh my God, yeah, because they're fully Disney now.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they take off that. Yeah, we can't talk about cocaine. And then they do all these other uh uh
Colombian booger sugar. I saw
yes.
that scene.
Oh
I was
my
like, oh my
God.
God.
It's so good.
South American
Oh,
marching powder.
oh, it's tearing me up. Ah, anyway. So there you go. That's all I got. If you don't have anything, I'll let you take over on the nerdery side of the house.
Awesome. Today we're going to talk about Dragonlance.
Cool.
Dragonlance.
Never played it, but cool.
I've read a lot of the stuff on it. I've never played in Dragonlance, but I have played a Dragonlance species.
Is that the Kinder?
Yeah, Kinder.
Okay.
Um, Dragonlance is a shared universe created by Lauren and Tracy Hickman and expanded by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss under the direction of TSR Inc. into a series of fantasy novels. The Hickmans conceived Dragonlance while driving in their car on the way to TSR for a job interview. Tracy Hickman met his future writing partner, Margaret Weiss, at TSR, and they gathered a group of associates to play Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game. The adventures during that game inspired a series of gaming modules and a series of novels, licensed products such as board games and lead miniature figures. In 1984, TSR published the first Dragonlance game module, Dragons of Despair, and the first novel, Dragons of Autumn Twilight. The novel began the Chronicles trilogy, a core element of the Dragonlance world. While the authoring team of Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss wrote the setting central books, numerous other authors contributed novels, short stories, and game supplements to the setting. Over 190 novels have used the Dragonlance setting. The Dragonlance campaign setting has also been used for multiple editions of Dungeons and Dragons and for the Saga system, following Wizard of the Coast's acquisition of TSR in 1997. Wizards licensed Dragonlance to Margaret Weiss's company, Sovereign Press, to produce game materials. This licensing agreement ran from 2001 to 2007. Dragonlance returned in 2022 with a new adventure module and the start of a new novel trilogy. So Dragonlance is out and you can play it and read it now. You don't just have to go to the used bookstore.
I think they did if you said it, I'm sorry I missed it. Didn't they do a Dragonlance Choose Your Own Adventure series?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. The thing was that the Hickmans, Tracy, who's a dude, and Laura were driving up to TSR to get a job because they've been playing together for a while. And they came up with this idea. It was like, again, like I said, in the stab, you see a lot of dungeons. You're not going to see any dragons. And if you do see a dragon, it's because you've done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Their idea was a little more like, hey, what if we incorporate smaller dragons into the story and make them like mounts or make, these dragon-ish people and make them like characters in the story and stuff.
Is that
Which
where
is
the Dragonborn came from?
yes,
Oh,
yes. Now they
okay.
don't call them Dragonborn. They call them something, Dragonelles, Dragonesh. Um, and they were actually a species in the gaming material.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were just evil. I think you could play them, um, depending on what type of dragon they were spawned from. Because again, you got the metallic dragons, which are good, and you've got the chromatic dragons, which are always evil, or maybe not necessarily evil, but they don't work with other people. And the idea was dragons were smaller. Um, you could ride them and you could basically joust with them, these giant dragon lances, which is where the story comes from. And the backstory in the world, they boiled it out and got it nice and down to. And I've put some information on some of that stuff out there. But the novels and the original uh, campaign setting stuff all revolved around this group of characters that these guys were playing and play testing. So you could basically follow the path of these characters in the book or the books, sorry. Um, just just like it played out in the novels, and that's what people loved about Dragonlance. It's like, oh wow, I can, I don't have to be Jim from the Shire. I can actually be Bilbo Baggins, in the Lord of the Rings.
Jim from the Shire.
Jim from the Shire. You could play Tasselhoff Burrfoot. Um, there's some weird, again, you got the same species. You got elves, you've got orcs, dwarves, gnomes, but you got some specialized characters. Like they don't have halflings in Dragonlance. They have Kinder. Kinder taller than halflings. They're kind of thin. They're built like elves, but like 4 feet tall. Their society is based around community property. You don't own anything in the Shire where they live. They also
Sig played a Kinder very, very well. Barndall?
Barndall Broadshire.
Barndall Broadshire, the Kinder. That fucker stole everything.
Everything.
If it wasn't nailed down, he was stealing it. He didn't think it was stealing.
No.
But he was stealing everything.
And you have to play them as true neutral because compared to everybody else, they have their own idea of morality. They're very honorable people, but again, they don't believe that anything belongs to anybody. Everything is community property.
Right.
And if you took something from him that you thought was really nice and cool and shiny, he didn't care. If he needed it, he'd go to you and go, hey, I need that knife. We're about to go stab some stuff. And in his society, you'd go, oh, sorry, man. Here, go ahead. That's just how they live. Our friend Keith, who was running that campaign, we never got to finish that campaign.
Right.
Our friend Keith, he ended that campaign because I decided to play a Kinder because I thought they were awesome. Just the idea of it, because we needed a thief in the group, and I'm like, oh, dude, I should play a Kinder. The ultimate goal of that game was a wand of wonder.
We finished that one.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
No, yes, the Kinder never got to the wand of wonder.
No, we stopped the Kinder from it. We got it because we returned. I thought we returned it to the Lord or the King or whatever it was, the wand of wonder. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
so it must
found
be
out that the whatever it was, the king or the lord or whatever, actually had evil intentions with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I could, well, you could be right. Maybe I'm thinking of a different campaign.
I know the Kinder never got his hands on it, and that was what Keith really wanted to happen.
Right.
Because the thing about the Wand of Wonder, it's really shiny, it's really beautiful, and it talks to you in your head. You pick it up and you can do anything with it. The problem is you don't necessarily have any control on what you do with it. So
maybe we
I want to make dinner. No, it's gonna make a dragon.
Right.
Yeah, so a lot of fun. Hickman developed his world creation technique by writing a self-publishing with his wife Laura, the adventure modules Rahisa and Pharaoh. Pharaoh was really popular early in D&D. That was Pharaoh was released in 1980, mostly due to the cover art on it, which was brilliant and I believe drawn by Larry Elmore, if I'm not mistaken. He also wrote some of TSR's Ravenloft module. Um, he was unemployed in 1982, and TSR offered him a job based on his submission of several modules that year. While driving from Utah to Wisconsin to start a job with TSR, Hickman and his wife created the Dragonlance universe concept. During the trip, Hickman and his wife discussed two ideas they had for several years: an entire world used to support a storyline, and a world dominated by dragons. Their ideas were well received by TSR, whose marketing department felt they had enough dungeons but not enough dragons.
Mm.
So Hickman suggested a series of 12 modules, each featuring a different dragon. TSR employee Harold Johnson suggested that Hickman should try to get additional support from the TSR staff members. And after a period of months, Hickman and the support of Jeff Grubb, Larry Elmore, Roger Moore, Doug Niles, Michael Williams, and others with whom they discussed ideas for the project. Meanwhile, Weiss was editing and writing various Endless Quest books for TSR, and the Dragonlance group decided the novel should accompany the game modules. TSR reluctantly agreed and hired a writer. Hickman became the design coordinator for Project Overlord, the cover name for which would later be known as the Dragonlance Saga. Now, I need to go down another little blind alley. Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman, at this point, also started writing a series of science fiction books with dragons called The Dragon Riders of Her.
Oh,
Yeah. As a way to supplement
Chelsea's read all of those.
as a way to supplement their income from Dragonlance, which they were also working on. TSR then decided to create a full franchise, including modules, board games, lead figures, and for the first time, novels. Weiss had been hired as an editor, and Hickman, and she began working with the author hired to write the novels. They weren't satisfied with the author and decided they should be the ones to write the book themselves. They collaborated over a weekend, writing the prologue of the first 5 chapters of the first novel, Dragons of the Autumn Twilight, based on the module Dragons of Despair. TSR liked their treatment and gave them the assignment, firing the author. After 2 years of development, TSR released the module Dragons of Despair and the novel Dragons of Autumn Twilight in March and November of 1984, respectively. TSR still had some doubts about the finished novel's sales potential and attempted to order 30,000 copies, ultimately ordering the minimum print run of 50,000. But the success of the novels prompted TSR to publish more copies to meet demand. The novel was written after the completion of the first Dragonlance game modules, which is probably the best way to go about it. They released the modules, people started playing them, and it was March, April, May, June, July, August. 9 months later, they released the novel. You could sit down and read the novel. I don't think they planned it this way, but honestly, that first Dragons of the Autumn Twilight module, which I had at one point, is a great module to start with because it starts with the people in the book have retired and they're talking about stuff in this module. So when you open it up, you start reading, you get all this information. Well, there's a story going on in the background at this inn that is up in a giant tree. It's like a giant tree house in it. Then 9 months later, the book comes out and you get to hear the story on how they ended up in that treehouse. I know they didn't plan it that way, but had they have planned it that way, it would have been perfect. I can, Ace of Strengths and Flushes all the way down the board. Plus, the novels are really good. Dragonlance received support products such as novels, calendars, computer games, and books of art. Larry Elmore, he liked the idea of the Dragonlance stuff, so he centered a lot of he did a lot of work for them, especially early on. So it's got that Larry Elmore feel, whereas, somebody else, Michael Whelan, he'll paint a dragon and it'll be a beautiful red dragon. Larry Elmore will paint the same damn dragon and throw every color in the rainbow in it. Maybe just a little flash of the tail will have like some turquoise in it. But his colors pop, and nobody else does it like him. which is amazing. And all of his stuff is incredible. A lot of the little images I pop up on our TikToks where I do collage images set to music. I'll
Hmm.
go and look for Larry Elmore prints and pictures just to throw them in there because they're so iconic and beautiful.
Speaking of that,
Sometimes,
real quick, have you noticed or have you seen that Facebook occasionally removes some of
Mhm,
our sound from our
mhm.
videos because it's
Yes,
breaking
I have.
copyright?
Yes, yes. If Facebook will do it, but nobody else will. It's
Right,
weird because
right,
TikTok did it a few 6 months ago, and then left them all back. But yeah,
mm,
Facebook is weird, and you never know which one it is.
right.
I could put up a song for the same artist on the same album, and they don't like one, and the other one's fine.
It's weird.
They'll add it to the group. I never know. Today's was I'll make people go back and look. I'm sorry, I had to pull people out of the timeline, but today's was by a band called House of Love out of England, which was great, and you never hear those guys anymore.
Mm.
But yeah, that Larry Elmore stuff is incredible, and he did a lot of stuff with them. They use some other artists too, but Larry Elmore stuff is you'll know it when you see it. Some of the ideas of Kryn. I'm going to talk a little bit about their different ages. I just got a little bit of information on here. The age of Starbirth is the first of Kryn's ages and is said to begin with the High God. The High God accepts the offer of Paladine, Gillian, and Takessus, and leads
Sure.
the three gods select their companion deities. Paladine and his companions become the gods of light. Takessus and her companions become the gods of darkness. Gillian and his companions become the gods of balance. Reorax shapes Kryn and the first dragons under the guidance of Paladin and Takessus. The other gods excluding chaos, aid in the creation of Kryn and its habitable world. So that's the first age. The second age is the age of dreams. It is often considering the beginning of recorded history and runs 9000 PC to 960 PC. Three time periods collectively form the Age of Dreams, the Foundation, the Time of Light. It's sometimes referred to as the Age of Light and the Time of Nights. Then you have the Age of Might, focuses primarily on the rise and fall of the Empire of Ishtar and runs from 1000 PC to 0 PC. A cleric of Paladine protects the city of Ishtar during the war, endearing the populace to the church. Dwarves return to Thoradin and open trade routes with Ishtar. Solemnia allies with the Hylo and grants mining rights to the dwarves of Thorbidin, and Thorbidin dwarves found the kingdom of Kaolin and Hilo and begin work on the Tree of Life. As the elves continue this self-imposed isolation, the ogre wars occur as ogres attempt to drive dwarves from Thoradin. Balafor begins a trade war with Ishtar over the Empire's trade laws, and the Kinder tax is signed. And then there's a war. The first king priest takes power in 280 PC. The Empire of Ishtar begins enforcing the king priest policies and repressing freedoms. Frustrated elves withdraw to their forest, and the king priest of 118 PC gives the proclamation of manifest virtue and draws up a list of evil acts that result in execution in arena time. Then you have the Age of Despair, which begins with the Cataclysm. What PC means is pre-Cataclysm. Uh, and it runs from 1 AC to 383 AC. Two time periods form the Age of Despair, the Time of Darkness, and the Time of Dragons. The Age of Mortals begins with a fallout from the Chaos War and the theft of the world by Takhissus and continues to the present. The history runs CA 384 AC to present. 427 AC is listed here. The last hero's tomb is built as a memorial of those lost in the Chaos War, and the dragon overlords appear on Kryn. Dalamar the Dark secretly moves the Tower of Palanthas to Nightlund before Kelenindros, the Blue Overlord, can attack it. It is widely believed that the cataclysm occurred as a result of the king priest's overweening ambition. The king priest sought godhood to not only purge the lands of evil, but of anything that did not agree with his viewpoint. However, such an act would ultimately destroy the doctrine of balance, so 13 warnings were sent to the king priest and the nation of Istar. A storm battered the city for 13 days, trees wept blood, and other ill omens were seen. I'm sorry, if trees start bleeding and there's a storm, and you've got loud noises going, stop what you're doing. I would stop what I was doing. I'm just saying. But yeah, basically the story of Dragonlance starts with a cataclysm, and you've got the Wars of the Dragons, where people are basically mounting dragons and fighting over the air in Dragonlance. And that's why you play it, so you can ride a dragon. Now, you can't start riding a dragon at first level. You do have to work up to it. Um, but it is happening all around, and you can befriend them or make enemies of them. And because they're smaller, they're not necessarily weapons of mass destruction, because that's the problem with dragons. A dragon is essentially a weapon of mass destruction when it's the size of a house and has all of these spells and powers and everything else. That's what they are in Game of Thrones.
Hmm.
Every dragon is a weapon of mass destruction. It's not just a steed or something else. It's it's hell comes to frog down. Um, but this Dragonlance idea is a little different. And again, I put some of the historical stuff that I kind of touched off on because I didn't want to get too techie and read a bunch of notes at you guys because it'll make it tune out. You don't want to do that. But in that YouTube page, you can go and actually follow the path of the history, and they give you little bits of things, more than what I gave. But again, I don't want to get bogged down. The idea of this is to kind of bring people's attention to Dragonlance because it is a great setting. It's not one that we ever played, but I did have all the modules to it.
Hmm.
So
I don't know why we never played it.
I think because we really liked playing Forgotten Realms. Forgotten Realms is a lot of fun, you know. Um, and most of D&D takes place in Forgotten Realms. When you say
Right.
D&D, most people are talking about Forgotten Realms. They're
Right.
not talking about Greyhawk or the Kingdoms of Calamar or
That vampire
Dragonlance.
one,
Ravenloft. Ravenloft
Ravenloft.
actually happens in um uh Forgotten Realms.
Mm.
Um all the Underdark stuff's Forgotten Realms. Baldur's Gate, that's all Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
All the werewolf kingdoms over in the Western lands. That's all takes place on Forgotten Realms. But yeah, there are other modules that you guys should get out and check out. Dragonlance being one of them. At some point, I would like to talk about Dark Sun, even though it's not being produced anymore. Because to me, Dark Sun was the coolest setting D&D ever did. And that maybe Planescape. Planescape is a little weird. But yeah, Dark Sun was just dark. But yeah, I'll probably touch up on Dark Sun at some point. But yeah,
Cool.
Dragonlance is cool. And if you like dragons and want to play with dragons, that's what that game's made for.
Maybe I could get some Lance books because I've always wanted to try to get Chelsea into an RPG, and her whole thing has been she would only want to play if she could be a dragon. And so I thought about the Dragonborn
Yeah.
that I know is out there, but maybe if she could be a dragon rider, maybe that's one I could
Uh-huh.
get her into. I
She
may
could
I
be
may
one
have
of
to check that out.
the dragon shear and a dragon rider. They also have wings. And I believe they're not so much flyers, but if memory serves, they can go run up off a cliff and glide down to safety. So
I,
more
I'm
like a
I'm
flying
gonna have to
squirrel.
check that out, see if I can maybe find some books.
Dude, the modules
Um,
are super cheap at your little half price bookstores.
I don't even know where we would have one of those down here. I'd have to I'd have to look see if we even have one down
Where you got
here.
half or used bookstores.
Yeah, I'm sure we do. I mean, sure, if not in Harlingen, I'm sure in McAllen or Brownsville, maybe they do. I'd have to look 'cause those are the bigger cities. Um, but yeah, that might be because I think we've got a couple of friends down here that I think could be interested in RPGs, and maybe I could get some running down here. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I'll look into it. I'll look into it.
Sweet.
Awesome. That all you got?
That is all I got.
Cool.
Other than get out and play it. Well, I mean, I probably kind of could have gotten down into more of the minutia, but again, I don't want to turn folks off.
Right. No, appreciate it. Always love getting down to do an RPG or game. So very, very much appreciate that.
Anytime.
With that, I will take over on the murdery side of the house. Excuse me.
Murder.
For today, I got my information off Medium, The Guardian, BBC News, Wikipedia, and ABC News Australia, and this is the murder of Luke Batty.
Luke Batty.
So Rosie Batty started her relationship with Greg Anderson in 1992. Their love quickly transformed into red flags that disturbed Rosie. They worked together at a recruitment company, and the two began a romantic relationship that lasted 2 years. Rosie claimed that Greg showed signs of sexual violence while they were together, and later alleged he attempted to rape a friend of Rosie's, after which Rosie ended the 2 year relationship. She then stopped talking to Greg for 8 long years. Their paths eventually crossed again, and they rekindled their relationship. And this time, the relationship produced a precious miracle, a baby boy they named Luke Batty. When Luke was born, Greg was staying at a Russian Orthodox monastery in New South Wales, but he was banned from there after making abusive phone calls to them and returned to Rosie and her newborn shortly after. I found that very weird. He was making abusive phone calls to the monastery, is how I read that, which is kind of weird. I don't know. I don't know.
That's weird.
Yeah. Um, Luke's birth was an intimidating time for Rosie because Greg wasn't excited, nor did she ever plan to have children. She had lost her mother at a young age, and she feared losing more individuals she cared about. But when Luke entered the world, that intimidation was slowly overpowered by a mother's love. And although Greg chose to be absent at Luke's birth, Rosie was given a lot of support by a handful of friends. Um, while Luke was still an infant, Greg changed his mind about steering clear of fatherhood. He attempted to be in Luke's life as well as start a relationship with Rosie again, but his anger just couldn't be contained. While she was still healing from her C-section scar, Greg assaulted her for the first time. She ended the relationship again, but kept in close contact because she wanted Luke to have an active father figure. Rosie said she tried hard to include Greg in her son's life. She said, quote, Greg was really keen to be involved. There was never any doubt in my mind that I should set aside animosity. I said to myself, this is a journey, and I'll keep doing things that feel right until they don't feel right anymore. As he got older, it was a constant test to decide. Greg was constantly stretching the boundaries. I really struggled with that boundary to tell him he couldn't see his son. It was really hard to say no to him, and nobody understood that. By the age of 2, Luke had witnessed multiple altercation between his parents, including a time when Greg threatened to kill Rosie, in addition to her pets, if she ever attempted to keep Luke from him. The next day after that, Rosie filed for a restraining order against him, but because his anger was never directed towards Luke, he was still allowed to continue seeing his son. From June 2004 until February 2014, Rosie made numerous allegations that Greg had physically assaulted and threatened to kill her, leading to a number of arrest charges and intervention orders, which in Australia is a restraining order.
Mhm.
Throughout his childhood, Luke developed into an energetic, effervescent child who loved physical activity through his through his footy or cricket. I should have looked up what footy is. Is that football?
Football. Yeah.
Okay,
It's soccer.
got it. His humor was a daily occurrence that brought Rosie a bunch of joy. Eventually, Rosie's restraining order against Greg ran out, and she didn't bother to renew it because he stopped his intimidating behavior for a while. When she ended a long term relationship she had with another man, Greg swooped back into her life in an attempt to rekindle the family once more. At that time, he was living out of his car without a job, so he assumed Rosie would offer him a place to stay. But in 2013, that expectation fell through, and as a result, he spitefully broke into her apartment, chased her around the house, and assaulted her while Luke stood as a witness. Greg was arrested by the authorities and placed in a holding cell where he exhibited entitled behavior. He said to officers, quote, I only answer to Jesus. What makes you think you got a right to hold me at all?
Narcissist.
Yeah. Another protective order was set in place, but it excluded Luke once again, meaning that Greg could still see his son whenever he pleased. Unfortunately, Greg's anger towards Rosie steadily drifted over towards a now 10-year-old Luke. During a ride in the car, he pulled a knife on Luke, threatening him, saying, quote, "It could all end like this." This incident caused Rosie to forbid him from contacting both of them, but a detective and child protection officer concluded that he was not threatening Luke. I don't
How?
understand
Yeah,
that.
how? He pulled a knife on him.
Yes. Child protection officers at that point decided to close the file. A court hearing allowed Rosie to learn that Greg had a past child pornography charges against him, but due to Australian privacy laws, Rosie never knew about the offense, and police were not allowed to disclose his charges to her even when she filed the restraining orders. It turned out that Greg was not even allowed to be alone with any children, and the charges were related to possession of child abuse images of young girls between the ages of 10 and 14. In July of 2013, Greg heavily challenged the court order preventing him from seeing his son, and the judge ultimately dropped the order and granted him rights to spend time with Luke as long as they were in public places. Rosie settled with the ruling, believing that it was the safest compromise for her son because he could still see his father, yet he was in a widely visible area. I don't disagree with her on that.
Yeah, no, you got to let the kid make up his own mind.
Right.
It sounds like the kid's getting pretty close to being there anyway.
Hmm. Well, Rosie explained all this, saying, quote, "He was in a homeless situation for many years. His life was failing and everything was becoming worse in his life, and Luke was the only bright light in his life." On Wednesday, February 12th, 2014, Greg showed up unannounced at one of Luke's cricket practices in public. Greg was only supposed to see him at the cricket grounds on weekends, and again, this was a Wednesday. Rosie said she had to call police to the cricket ground on other occasions and considered it this time, but she said it was a nice night and Luke's father seemed happy to see him and not agitated. It was said that he played the role of a typical cheerful, supportive father, motivating their child to have fun in a sport they enjoyed. And at one point during the practice, Greg guided Luke over to one of the cricket nets. Rosie noticed the two walking away and tried to usher Luke home for the evening, but he begged for a few more minutes with his father. As Rosie turned her back to allow Luke to wander off with Greg, she heard what she described as a disturbing sound. She quickly turned around to see Luke's lifeless body on the ground as Greg hovered over him. It appeared to be a
In the
horrible.
time it took her to turn her back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It originally appeared to be a horrible accident where Greg accidentally hit Luke in the head with a cricket bat. However, when one of the coaches rushed to help with the situation, Greg stated, quote, "He's fine. He's in heaven now." There were other children who witnessed the ordeal who later told police they saw Greg intentionally and repeatedly hit Luke with a bat following pulling out a knife and stabbing him to death. So yeah, in the time it took her to start to walk away and turn around, he repeatedly hit him with a bat and stabbed him.
Wow. That dude was fast. You ever seen a
Um,
cricket bat?
yeah,
Those things are not hard to get a swing on.
no, no.
They do them like this. You can't you if he got around on it like he would with a baseball bat, he had to be coming with some force, you know what I'm
Mm-hmm,
saying?
mm-hmm. So police were called, and as they arrived on the scene, Greg stabbed himself with the same knife he used to kill his son and resisted arrest, ultimately in resulting in suicide by cop situation. As it turned out, when Greg killed Luke, there were 4 warrants out for his arrest, including one related to his possession of child sex abuse images. He was facing a total of 11 criminal charges, and there are 2 intervention orders out against him. But police officers who visited Greg in the weeks before Luke's death did not have access to that information. That's messed up. How did they
Mm-hmm.
not have access to this?
Different department.
Um, Rosie believed that Greg premeditated Luke's death and chose to kill him not because he truly disliked his son, but it was because it was a revenge tactic against her. She told news sources, "Can you imagine what that feels like to that someone against all odds wants to make you suffer for the rest of your life to win?"
Mm-hmm.
The coroner, Ian Gray, called Luke's death a, quote, tragic loss of a young life full of promise and said his father was solely responsible for his death. He made 29 recommendations and said no one could have predicted Greg would kill his son. He said, I conclude based
No
on,
one?
yeah, I disagree with that.
Yeah.
He said, quote, I conclude based on the comprehensive evidence in this case that Luke's death was not reasonably foreseen by any entity or person, including Miss Rosie Batty. No one person or agency could have reasonably been expected to foresee that Mr. Anderson would be the rare perpetrator and Luke that rare victim of a violent filicide. Disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Completely disagree. I
Well,
think there
okay.
were plenty of signs that he was violent.
Yeah. Also, sometimes I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely it's the McDonald's right. I forget we have been studying this for the last 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah, the family annihilator. Well, and this isn't a family
The
annihilator because it's a, well, okay, let me back up. The McDonald triad has been investigated longer. That's been a theory for longer.
Yeah,
It's
the family
the family
annihilator.
annihilator that hasn't been studied very much and is very young. This is not a family annihilator one. I guess maybe it kind of fits the
Eh,
bill because he killed his son and then himself. So maybe, but this is definitely one that is very young in its research. But I think there were plenty of signs
mhm.
that he had some anger issues and was violent. Um, so I don't know. Coroner Gray further accepted evidence that Greg may have had a delusional disorder. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
He said, however, the absence of any psychiatric assessment means no findings can be made with any certainty that Mr. Anderson suffered from any mental illness. I understand that because he didn't get positively treated or assessed, but I think there were enough signs.
Hmm.
Commissioner Gray's investigation did identify a number of gaps or flaws in the family violence system in Victoria, including the failure to engage the boy's father in the family violence system and making him accountable for his actions, which I do agree with. He did say, I find that none of the actions of the organizations or persons whose conduct has been analyzed, either singularly or in combination, caused or directly contributed to Luke's death. And I don't disagree with that, or I don't agree with that. Coroner Gray also recommended the magistrates court have a fast track system for family violence cases and that the Victoria Police should introduce a warning flag to identify high risk family violence perpetrators. He said, quote, there should be a judicial power that can be activated where there are safety concerns, particularly in relation to children, to mandate that a perpetrator or respondent is to be assessed by a forensic psychiatrist.
Hmm.
Had such a power existed here, the court could have ordered Mr. Anderson be psychiatrically assessed before his application for contact with Luke was considered. And that's a good thing. I hope they put that one in place.
Yeah.
Rosie did end up using the traumatizing experience to become a voice for victims of family violence and stir up more important conversations related to the issue. She began speaking publicly about her experience after addressing the media the morning after Luke's murder. She had said, he's not just a statistic. He was a person, and this should have never happened to him. No one is to blame, but we still have much to learn. She became an advocate for domestic violence survivors and victims and sought to address perceived systematic failure or systemic failures in responses to domestic violence in Australia. She's spoken about a lack of communication between services, about public perceptions of domestic violence, about a lack of funding, and about police and legal procedures that she felt disempowered for her ability to protect herself and her son. In early 2014, Rosie established the Luke Batty Foundation to assist women and children affected by domestic violence. In April of 2014, she responded to a comment from journalist Joe Hildebrand on 10 Network Studio 10, a TV panel show, in discussing proposed Victorian laws for compulsory reporting of child abuse cases. Hildebrand said that being scared for your own safety, I'm sorry, is not an excuse. He's a fucking asshole.
Hmm.
In response, Rosie said that she was shocked at the notion and had thought that after her son's death, she had hoped that something would come out of this that would actually show the difficulty women have in abusive relationships. In whoops. Almost spilled my drink. Sorry.
It's okay. And I would like to point out, fucking asshole is probably the nicest thing you could have said about that dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
In 2015, she received the Australian of the Year award for her courageous attempts to persist for legal changes regarding how domestic violence situations are handled. Rosie said her son had not died in vain and that she felt inspired more than ever to continue the work, which earned her the Australian of the Year title as governments began to grasp the magnitude of family violence. She also joined with Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull to announce a $100 million Australian domestic violence legislative package. The
Nice.
Victorian government has also given police an extra 2.5 million for system improvements to increase the speed at which warrants appear in their database. On her son's 1-year death anniversary, she posted his memorial to his memorial Facebook page, saying, "quote I miss you and still find it incomprehensible that I can never cuddle you or steal a kiss on your cheek while you're asleep. The house is quiet. Something is missing. It's you. I will always miss you, my beautiful, handsome, intelligent, and perfect little man." And that's the sad story of the murder of Luke Batty.
Well, thank you for that, sir. That was some fascinating stuff. Sad.
Yeah, and and again, somebody that was very troubled.
Hmm.
He was a violent person. Don't know much about his history, but obviously had a lot of violence. And if he truly killed Luke just to take revenge at his wife, there's a lot wrong there. Um,
Yeah.
I hope that the from what she's doing and they're trying to do with the legislative the laws to get better laws surrounding domestic violence and what you do and getting faster response on warrants and things like that they're out there. This is one that
Well,
could
I
have been
mean,
caught earlier.
yeah. Well, I mean, if you go down and if you go down that line, not only if we're investigating it and looking at it and understanding it and getting people to see medical professionals, maybe we can not only prevent the domestic abuse, but prevent the domestic abuser in the first place.
Yeah,
Because ultimately, that is what is best for everyone's society.
yeah, yeah,
Just prevent them from being made in the first place.
yeah.
And if you see someone who's going to do it, let's get them where they're not on that path
Hmm. Hmm.
because they're not born that way. No
Right.
one is.
we
As you and I
think
both
we
know. Yeah,
think
we think.
we did at least one episode where it sure did seem like it was in the DNA.
It was
You
in the
remember
DNA.
that remember
Yeah.
the guy and his father, and they did
Yeah.
very similar paths,
And
even
they've
though his
never had
father,
any contact with
right,
each other. Yeah.
right. So who knows?
Mhm.
Who knows? There
But
may be something
in
to this.
most cases that we've come across, it's not.
Hmm.
I mean, that
Right,
we had that one, but in most cases, these people are made. Let's
right,
just stop making them.
right,
And then we don't have tragedies like this anymore,
right,
you know? And hopefully with what she's doing, that will lead at least Australia on that path.
right. Yeah, I mean, because Luke's murder was avoidable.
Yeah.
Um, had the laws been in place to protect him in the first place
Hmm.
from his father, it was a preventable death. And it's just sad that they're making strides to fix this now. It's sad
Hmm.
that his death had to cause had to
Had to
was
cause it.
was
Yeah.
was the
We
catalyst for that.
yeah, we could have done it before,
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately.
So thanks for joining me with that. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Thank you. It's some fascinating, fascinating stuff.
So that will take us to the end of another recording week. As always, you can find more information about us on nerderymurdery.com. That's our hub. That's everything that we have for the show. You can get links to the topics we talk about, plus pictures and sometimes video. And you also find the link on our front page to our our YouTube page, which Zig so often updates.
Thank you. Yes, on this particular episode, we get pretty nerdy on that stuff. So enjoy.
It's in the title, people.
Yeah.
Nerdery.
It is in the title.
Um, Also on our website, you can find the link to our merchandise page, where if you wish to show off your nerdery nerdy fandom, please do consider purchasing something from that. That, along with our Patreon, our patrons help with the costs that are associated with the show. It does cost to keep our show on the air, for our uploads, for our website, and everything that goes along with that. So we do appreciate each and every one of you.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Last but not least, please don't forget to leave a 5-star review wherever you can. It really helps us and helps others find our topics or our subject matter, or our topics of the God. I've lost my words. They can find the stuff that we talk about from week to week.
You all right, buddy?
Oh, all right. I just completely lost my words on that. I don't know where I went. It's blah, 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 blah. So anyway, with that,
I have been Zig with your nerdery.
and I'm Jeffrey with your murdery.
Cue the music.